Very often, beginning artists prefer to think about colors first. We take beautiful colors, mix them, add shadows, light, and we cannot figure out what's wrong. Why does our artwork look flat? And it is because we haven't thought about tone. But in my opinion, tone is much more important than color. Colors in digital can easily be changed at any stage, while mistakes with tone are usually more difficult to fix. So let's see what is tone. Tone is a scale from light to dark values. A common mistake is to draw using only the middle tones of this range, which makes the picture look flat enough. Let's look at a simple example. In this bowl, we can see a kind of volume. There is light here, and here is shadow. Now let's put it in black and white mode. Okay. All the volume has almost disappeared, and the ball has turned into a pretty flat circle. Yeah? Now let's look at another version of this ball. Here I thought about the tone more. Let's put it into black and white mode as well. And now let's compare these two balls. I think the difference is obvious. By the way, this way we can easily check ourselves. Convert the color mode into black and white, because our eyes don't always see the obvious difference in tones, focusing more on colors. Now let's look at what colors were used in both images. In the first version, we see two different shades of the same tone. And in the second version, the difference in tone is much more visible. You can see this better if you look at this color picker in Photoshop. Our colors are marked here. And we can see the tone if we draw a line to the left, like this. Here and here, the tones are about in the same line. And here, we can already see that a different darker shade has been chosen for the shadows. If you transfer it to this palette, you will get about such a difference in tones. And of course, we choose the color by scrolling the palette up and down, but this has nothing to do with tone, colors only. So now let's look at another common mistake in tone when we have several objects. For example, here each subject looks well separately. But when we look at them together, we see that something is wrong here. It's all about the fact that the objects are again no different in tone from each other, even though they have different colors. So, the tone of both objects is the same. Let's try to darken one of the objects, and immediately the picture looks much more interesting, right? The ball immediately comes to the foreground, and even in such a simple picture, we can get the main and secondary objects. So, to improve your work, make sure to increase the contrast between the tones of the different objects. Okay, back to this scale here. Beginners are often afraid to use contrasting tones and prefer to use only medium tones like this. But we already know that it's better if you use several different tones from black to the white. But it is better to use black and white as accents, depending on the main tone of your work. To make it clearer, I'll show you some examples of my works, just to show how I use tone. For example, in these two illustrations, I wanted to show, like a magical atmosphere, so I used mostly dark tones. But to make the work look more interesting, I added some light sources and quite contrasting light shades. So in a room, I tried to emphasize the main area and to draw the viewer's attention there. I also added a few extra lights to make it more interesting, to look at the details. And then there were some less obvious highlights, but they added atmosphere as well, for my opinion. And in this piece, I added a glowing ball, so the light from it that falls on the character. Also, I added the white blues and some of the brightest highlights on the metal. On her earrings, for example, and on some of the coins. I think if all the coins glowed the same way, it wouldn't have the effect we need. So I like to emphasize just a few accent pieces. Well, a couple more of my works. To give an example of how I use the difference in tones, is the overall tone of the pattern is not as dark as in the previous pieces. If you look at this granny, in general, I used a pretty medium tones here. For example, skin, hair, and her pants. But to make the work more interesting and not too boring in tones, I decided to add black details. This is her top, shoes, glasses frame, and little details in her makeup, like this. I think without these black accents, the character would have looked much worse. I use the same in this work, adding a black t-shirt, for example. Without the dark elements, it would have looked something like this. Probably the book and the sandwich would have been lost in the background of the t-shirt, and it would have been more difficult to pick all elements out of the picture. To summarize, let's look at the main points. Think about tone first and then think about color. Please don't forget to check your work in black and white. It's really easy and always helpful for me, and I'm sure that for you too. Volume is created by tone. If the tone isn't done well, the color cannot make the work better, unfortunately. Control the difference in tones between different objects. You can try to make the main subject more contrasting and stand out. It works well usually. Try to add contrasting details. It is important that such details are just accents, then they will look really better. So that's all for today. I hope it was useful for you, and thanks for watching.